Hola and welcome everyone to the I Am Her Empowerment and Impact Summit for Career Women. And we are now with Miss Cornelia Shipley. Hello, my dear. How are you?
Hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you?
I am great. It's good to see you again.
Happy March. Happy March.
Yes, yes, yes. So I want to introduce to you who this wonderful woman is. We met a couple of months back. And I'm so glad that we did. I love meeting other women who are very productive with their time and their energy. So it was a great match. And Miss Cornelia is a best-selling author, thriving entrepreneur, dynamic speaker, coach, and a world-class trainer. She is known for empowering people to achieve their peak performance, strategically plan for their future, and ultimately create a life and work that really works. Cornelia leveraged her extensive corporate career, starting as a sales manager for the #1 consumer goods company to leading the human resources function in a critical manufacturing facility. Welcome, Ms. Cornelia.
Well, thank you, Miss Kourtney. It's good to see you.
So today we are going to talk about communication, are we not?
That is the plan. That is the plan. It's the one thing I find in my work every day that women don't do wrong, but don't fully leverage. Right? There's the sense of how we are trained to communicate as women, this whole notion of, kind of showing up and being gracious and being polite and leveraging the power of our femininity, which is all very well true and good. And there are some things from the masculine or that are more historically deemed as masculine that we need to integrate into our feminine to ensure that we're set up for success. And a lot of times, whether it's a public-private conversation or the private conversation, that's a conversation that we as women aren't having.
Oh, okay. I can see how some women are more masculine than feminine because they feel they have to compete with the male energy that's going on in the office. So are you going to teach us how to even it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you think about, you watch your male colleagues, and I guess the first thing I really want your audience to know, Kourtney, is that when men are up for promotion or they see an opportunity, if they have 30% of the skill necessary for the job, they'll go for the job. Women, on the other hand, if we are not 90 to 95% prepared for the opportunity, we won't go for the job. And we aren't doing the things in the background to have us be considered in private conversation for opportunity because we don't leverage common everyday interaction to position ourselves for success in that way.
Awesome. So why do you think or believe that women fail to self-promote in the workplace?
Because we're taught, go back to high school, right? You didn't like the girls that bragged about themselves, right? Right? You didn't. Nobody did. Nobody liked a girl who thought they were just, she's all that, all this, all that, right? And so we translate that into the workplace inappropriately. That attitude we bring with us, that story we bring with us, that it's inappropriate to do self-promotion. And yes, it's inappropriate to do self-promotion in a high schoolish way. Absolutely. But it's not inappropriate to do self-promotion. And more often than not, as women, we don't know the right way to do it, or we miss natural opportunity to do it. And so either way, whether you're missing the opportunity or you don't know how, you're still stuck. And so it's your responsibility to say, okay, great, here I am in this corporate environment with an opportunity and an organization that expects me on some level to be talking about the work that I'm doing, to be talking about the impact that I'm having so that we can continue to move the business forward. And that's not about bragging, and that's not about being bodacious. That's about doing the work that the company is expecting you to do and giving them the information to effectively evaluate you and your ability to have the career that you want in the organization that you work for.
This is just saying what I do. Hopefully I'm doing it well. And you go on, it's not being bodacious. I like that. And those are facts.
That's
and you
right.
Be bold in what you're doing and how you're doing it. If not, change it.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. And, you and I were talking about this when we were together in Orlando when we met. There's this commonly asked question that we get asked every day, and it's the question, how are things going? And 9 times out of 10, women in particular answer that question inappropriately. They say fine. And what I mean by inappropriately is obviously if someone is saying how are things going as a greeting to you, you can figure that out, and you know that the appropriate thing to say is fine, or I'm okay, how are you? But there are people in the organization who are not asking you that question as a matter of discourse to be gracious and to be friendly. They actually need to know the answer to that question. And if you're answering it by saying fine, every time you do that, you miss an opportunity to brand yourself and your work in your organization. And it's an opportunity that your male counterparts are fully leveraging.
So,
And it's an easy one to fix.
So when I hear you say that, when they're asking you, how's it going? And you say, fine, is that an opportunity to say, well, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is not working?
No, as this is not a complaint fest. Absolutely not a complaint fest. When there's 6 things really, Kourtney, that people need to do when they are asked that question. So, how are things going? And well, really 5. The first is to say thank you, right? We live in a society today where people are fundamentally not polite. And just the fact that you say thank you for asking is a disruptor, right? People are running around the hallways saying, oh, hey, how are things going? And they keep walking, right? If you say, oh, well, Kourtney, thanks for asking, immediately somebody's going to go, oh, wait, this is going to be a different conversation than the other 6 conversations I just had where somebody just said, hey, how are you? And fine, how are you? Right? And so it is important that you remember your manners and that you say thank you, which is one of the ways that we as women can begin to integrate the feminine into this what is historically deemed a masculine action called bragging about yourself. And then the second thing you want to do is reiterate your vision and the progress that you're making against your vision, right? So if you're a human resources leader, like I was in corporate America when I left, I need to be talking about the things that are going on related to the current initiatives that are going on in the human resources function, things that are going on in our plant that we're trying to be successful around, and to be able to talk about where those things are and how those things relate to me and my career, where I'm trying to take my career, how this opportunity is setting me up for long-term success in my career. And then once you've done that, you're integrating as part of that kind of the status of your current work or a current project, right? So you're connecting your big vision to the status of the current work or project. And then you want to talk about a recent development, activity, or win, right? There's always something new going on in the work that you're doing. And if not, then you're not in an organization that's on the planet, because at the rate at which we're doing business today, something is always going on. There's something new. There's something that's happening. And you want to be able to give that impression of increase in your own career. And you want to do that on an ongoing basis. So there should always be something new with you. There should always be some new thing, not like the flavor of the month thing, but something that you're doing that's making meaningful contribution that you're ready to talk about. And then you really want to make sure that you are demonstrating what research has shown are really the 5 things that every leader has to demonstrate to be seen as a successful and competent leader. And those, one of which you've already done, which is to cast a clear vision. The second is to establish a purposeful strategic focus. So when you're talking about the current work that you're doing, you have to connect that back to the company's strategy. And I feel, Kourtney, like I'm running a mile a minute. So let me take a breath. and let me ask you, based on what I just shared, I mean, there's obviously more, but based on what I just shared, let me stop there for a second and just check in with you and see, is this making sense? Is this resonant for you? What questions are coming up?
It's resonating even for me in dealing with my business. And it's funny because when you said about the feminine and the masculine, I got this vision of, this is a scenario that I run into at work. They're really big, heavy doors. I'm a female. I'm not going to open the door for a male. I'm just not. I'm the female, and having come from a place where I do have a lot of masculine energy and I try to be in my feminine energy, I'm going to let the male be the male. I'm not going to try to step into his role. So when you said that, I said, yeah, that's part of staying in my feminine role just so that I can be more feminine. Like, I'm not going to open a door for a 7-foot guy when he needs to be opening it for me. But when you were talking, and I was like, okay, my big vision. So for me, saying thank you is just who I am. So my big vision, okay, and how would that look when I'm having a conversation with someone in passing? Well, thank you for asking. Everything is going well. I'm really surprised at how fast, the goals that I have on my list are coming into fruition now. And it's amazing because now I have this new platform for the podcast. I wanted to go ahead and start up again. So I'm really looking forward to all these other interviews that I have to do. So everything is going really great. So I'm just putting myself in the scenario as you're walking it down on what I would say or what options, obviously depending on who I'm talking to, that this works.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so because, these are women that are in a corporate space, you have to understand what's necessary to be perceived as an effective leader. Right. And so that first thing is to really casting a clear vision. That second thing is really connecting your work to your strategic focus, back to your company strategy. And one of the things I find in my work quite often with women in corporate is that they cannot connect the work that they do to the company's strategic plan. And what I want your audience to know is that if you don't understand, one, how your organization makes money, or two, how you connect to that, how your work, your department, your division connects to that, tomorrow when you go to work, tomorrow when you go to work, I'm gonna need you to ask that question and get that clarity so that you can really understand how what you do drives the business and ultimately the profitability and stock price of your company. And then you've got to be able to demonstrate this principle of lifelong leadership by expanding your emotional intelligence. So you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing to continue to develop you and what you're doing to make meaningful connections in your organization. Those are the 5 things that have to happen for people to perceive you as being effective as a leader. And you've got to be able to integrate those into this notion of how are things going, right? So I get that this is a long answer, and I've gone through 4 of the 5 things that you have to share, but I want you to know that it's doable, and it's doable in like less than a minute. And I'm going to demonstrate that for you in a minute, I promise. When I talk about this in front of audiences, people don't think it can be done in less than a minute. And I invite people all the time, to put a timer up. And so, at some point when you get ready to, put this in your vault, maybe you can put a timer up and you can time me so people can see exactly how long it takes me to do it. But the last thing you need to do is to decide what the personal facts are that you're going to have in discussion that are consistently shared about you. Because you get to script that narrative. I tell people all the time, brand management, your reputation comes down to 3 things: what you say, what you do, and what other people say about what you said and did. That's it. What you say, what you do, and what other people say about what you said and did. Mm-hmm. And so you control 2/3 of that equation. And it's important where your personal reputation is and what people talk about you about, right? What the conversation is about you and your personal life, that you introduce facts consistently that you want people to know about you. Mm. So for example, when I met Kourtney and I are both married. So I bonded with Kourtney over being married. I talked about my husband, right? I was like, oh, you're married. How long have you been married? How did you meet your husband, right? So I'm not talking about me, and I want you to pay attention. I'm not talking about me because a lot of women in the corporate space are not comfortable with disclosing things about themselves. That's fine. you still have to disclose things that make meaningful connection for people to be able to relate to you. I'm not a mom. I found out Kourtney was a mom. We spent the weekend talking about my godson. He's not even a blood relative of mine. But we were able to bond over this notion of, you have kids, I have a kid in my life, here's the thing about my godson, right? And so, unfortunately, my godson knows I tell stories like this about him. He actually heard me speak a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, and he was like, I didn't know I was such a big part of your speech. I had no idea. So it is important that you not say things that are inappropriate or going to make people uncomfortable about them. But you do need to decide what your personal facts are in discussion about you. And if you're a single woman, my unsolicited advice to you is that you not talk about the people that you date. And the easiest way to do that is you can make a joke. I used to, when I was in corporate America, and people would ask me, oh, so are you dating? And I'm like, well, men are a dime a dozen. They come and they go. And so when we find one that's going to stay, I'll let you know. Right? Very lighthearted, nothing, overly or underly committal. If I had a social event to go to at work, I always went by myself, or I took my mother when she was alive, right? So you just decide what the facts are that you want in discussion about you, that you're comfortable with creating meaningful connection with other people about, because that's the point of sharing the fact.
Right.
The fact isn't to share it because it's salacious. It's about making a meaningful connection with another human being, right? I made a meaningful connection with Kourtney, and now I get to talk to your audience. That's what life is about. It's about making meaningful connections and creating relationships that in your career are going to get you to where you really want to be.
Right. And to be able to
right.
breathe.
Whew. Right.
And to know that
I could stand on that personal facts soapbox all night, because there's so many people who get themselves in so much trouble off of that one issue. They share things so inappropriately in the workplace that I'm often shocked.
What do you mean?
Really am often shocked.
I mean, obviously you don't want to talk about sex in the office, but what other?
Right, but you can talk about politics in the office in a way that is productive. You can talk about politics in the office in a way that is polarizing. You can talk about sex in a way that is productive. You can talk about sex in a way that is polarizing, right? You can have conversation about almost any topic, but if you do it in a salacious or in a polarizing way, you're going to get yourself into trouble. And more often than not, when people have a platform, an issue that they're heavily ingrained in, they don't have the emotional distance to talk about that personal fact in a way that's not triggering for them. And so when we as women get triggered, we get emotional, we get loud, we might start crying. We have all of these reactions that then question our credibility in the workplace.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's important that people decide. So for me, the personal facts in discussion about me that are very, very consistent. My husband's a member of the Recording Academy, so that means I typically go to the Grammy Awards and I vote on them. I share that fact with people because most people like some form of music, right? And so it makes an instant opportunity for me to connect to people. Most people have never been to the Grammy Awards. So that makes me interesting and memorable.
Right.
Two things, interesting and memorable. And you've got to figure out what the facts are in discussion about you that are interesting and memorable. I studied abroad when I was in graduate school. I used to live in Australia. That makes me interesting and memorable, right? My husband speaks fluent Japanese. That makes me interesting and memorable, right? I legally have two sisters, but I'm my parents' only child. People go, huh? How's that possible? That's interesting and memorable, right? And it's also the truth, right? So I'm not suggesting that you make things up. It's important that you have facts in discussion about you that are truthful and that you're really okay with people asking you about. So when people ask me about my sisters know who they are in the world. They know that legally I'm their sister. If you were to ask them, they would say, I have a sister, and then I have a legal sister who's not related to me. They may or may not say that. Because I'm an only child, when people ask me about siblings, my default answer is I have two sisters legally, but I'm my parents' only child. And I say it that way because I get the Scooby-Doo, huh? face in response, right? But I know that that's going to be something people will remember.
Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that your responses are intentional to make sure that you have communication and to make sure that people are paying attention. And I'm very intentional.
Right.
That's why I catch it, that you're not just like, yeah, yeah, okay. No, you're intentional to make sure people are listening and that you can have a dialogue. So I appreciate that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So I promised I would do a demonstration, Kourtney. So if you ask me the question, how are things going? I will try to make sure I hit most of the high points.
Let's see. Let me get a timer here.
Da, da, da. Pressure, no pressure.
We'll do the stopwatch. All right.
Okay.
So after I finish my question, I'm going to start.
Okay.
So, Cornelia, how is it going today?
Well, first of all, Kourtney, thank you so much for asking. Things are going really well. I actually am super excited because I am on my way. Actually, today I'm getting ready to leave tomorrow for Michigan to celebrate my dad. He started a charter school 20 years ago, and so this school is celebrating its 20th anniversary. And next week I am going to Indianapolis to be with a whole denomination of leaders and helping them to really understand how to strategically plan for their business. I'm also really excited because we just took on 2 new corporate clients, and I'm super excited because I get a chance to spend some time with the women at the I Am Her Summit. And so I'm really excited about that and the opportunity to pour into the lives of those women. How are things with you? So I did it in 47 seconds.
49, you did great.
So I did it in less than a minute, right?
Right.
So here's what I was intending to communicate in that answer, right? Because as an entrepreneur, what's important from a business perspective is that people have a sense of what you do, and they have a sense of the fact that you do it well. So I started with my dad, right? I said I was going to go see my father, who has the charter school that's been in existence for 20 years, and we're celebrating the anniversary of that, right? That's a public fact. You can go Google the school. You can go see when it was started. You can see that it was started by my dad. I tell people the personal facts and discussion about you should be Googleable facts. Not on Google, shouldn't be on there. Shouldn't be something you would share.
Okay.
In my opinion, right? It's an easy filter. Then I talked about the fact that I have a new client and we're going to go spend a week with these leaders, helping them to strategically plan. And then I talked about getting 2 other new clients, right? And then I thanked you for asking and asked, how are you, right? So I gave this impression of increase. I gave an impression that, there was a lot going on in our business. I talked about speaking at the summit, so people know that I speak in addition to the other work that we do with clients. I didn't tell you what the client work was. I talked a little bit about strategic planning. If we were to roll the videotape back, right, you would hear me say I'm going to do strategic planning training for this denomination, right? So yes, I work in the corporate space, but we define corporate as not-for-profit, for-profit, and religious institutions, right? So because they all have their own corporate culture, they all have their own infrastructure, and they're all organizations that we have an opportunity to support. So what I want people to know about my answer to that question is that you get to decide what's in discussion about you first and foremost. 2, that you can have an answer, and I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't practice it before you and I got on the call today. I know I'm going to have to say something because every time I talk about this topic, I do that. But I never know what I'm going to say. But literally, in 2 days, on Thursday, I'll be at a reception Thursday night. And next week, I'll be in Indianapolis for 3 days with these leaders. So you need to know how to filter your life in a way that when people say, how are you, or how are things going, or the other question people often answer wrong, which we may get a chance to talk about today, is what do you do, right? And so regardless of how the question gets asked, you have to be prepared to talk about yourself and communicate your value in a meaningful way.
Effective communication.
Exactly. And leveraging your interactions to get you where you want to be.
Right. And sometimes you don't know how long that time frame of interaction is going to be. So I definitely want to encourage the women to sit down and say, what is interesting and memorable about me? To have your little short list. If you just keep a notepad beside your bed so you can start building something, so you can pick like your 3 favorites to always have them top of mind, so that you kind of build you something, and it doesn't have to be robotic, but at least you will have, fresh on top of your mind because you've been jotting them down and thinking about them, and you'll start to piece it together. And obviously with practice comes perfection. So they'll have it under a like you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, and then here's the other thing, because I know, you share with me that a lot of the folks that are in your community are transitioning from the world of work to their own work, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah. And so, as you think about when you're out networking in the world and you want to talk about that new thing that you're up to, please don't say, I'm an entrepreneur. Please don't say, oh, what do you do? I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, that tells people absolutely nothing. The reason that they're asking and the reason you want to have a very clear answer is so that they can figure out who they know who needs your service or product. So when people ask me, and I have all kinds of answers. I have snarky answers. I have, when I'm not really interested in having a networking conversation. But if I'm really interested in having a networking conversation, when people say to me, oh, so what do you do? And I say, well, I lead a team of coaches and consultants that fundamentally do 4 things. We do strategic planning, we do executive coaching, we do coach training, and we do customized leadership development programs at the director level and above. What do you do? The very clear answer. That took less than 30 seconds, right? I don't say that I'm a CEO. I don't say that I'm a president. I just say I lead a team, because that's true. Doesn't matter what my title is. Yes, I own the business, but that's not what's relevant. That's not what matters to the person that's talking to me. What matters to the person that's talking to me is, do they need strategic planning, executive coaching, coach training, or customized leadership development programming? If one of those 4 things is present for them, or they know somebody who has one of those 4 issues, hopefully they're going to say, I need to talk to her.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing about having clarity and knowing clear communication. The whole point of asking is for that. But when you don't know that, you just give a title because that's your ego speaking. But when you know it's to be effective, you tell people what you do because that's what you want to do. You want to respond.
That's right. That's right. Right. So when you and I met, right, you were like, oh, well, what do you do? And I said that. And then you asked me a question. You said, oh, well, do you speak? And I said, I absolutely do. But that's not part of my standard answer. And the reason it's not part of my standard answer is because fundamentally when we get hired, what's the core of our work? The core of our work is one of those 4 things. That doesn't mean that I won't speak. It doesn't, I'm going to speak next week at this conference, doing this training for this group of leaders, right? So it's not that I won't speak. It's that I recognize that why do people hire me? My answer to that question has to be relevant to why people hire me. And if it's not relevant to why people hire me, it's not a useful conversation in my world.
Mm-hmm. So for a corporate woman, when someone asks her, what do you do? Oh, I'm CEO. Oh, I'm, manager of. Oh.
I'm a manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers.
What does
that mean? A manager of, do you know what PricewaterhouseCoopers do? Right? There's enough work. They do human capital management. They do audit. They do mergers and acquisitions. They do strategic planning. They do leadership development. I don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. That and $4.33 will get me my drink at Starbucks. Right? It is a totally useless answer. The $4.33 I would appreciate, though, because I need a venti coconut milk hot chocolate, no whip.
Give her drink, please.
Right? Drink. And so it's just really important. It's just really, really important that if you're going to answer the question, that you answer it, especially if you're a consultant, like you work for one of the big 4 firms, that you answer that in a way that people can understand. Do they know somebody who can hire your firm to do whatever it is you're doing so you can build your book of business so you become a partner in the firm, if that's what you want to do, right? If you're an OBGYN, it's an obvious answer. What do you do? I'm an OBGYN. People know what that is,
Mm-hmm.
right? But even my OBGYN wouldn't answer that question that way. He would say that he is a myomectomy specialist, and that is the surgery that you have to remove fibroids with the laparoscopically,
Mm-hmm.
right? He has done over 30,000 of those. He's an expert
Mm-hmm.
at that. And so he doesn't talk, I mean, yes, he's an OBGYN, but if you were to ask him what does he do, he's a myomectomy specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question most people ask is, oh, what's that?
Right. It's a
right?
question.
Right. It creates opportunity for conversation. And then you find out, and then he usually winds up in a conversation about somebody's uterus for the next 15 minutes.
Right. Or,
right?
that person, or they know somebody, so he's getting a referral.
Exactly.
It's intentional conversation, effective communication. And we all.
Exactly.
That's, a necessary
exactly.
thing we all need in our lives. And I'm just like, yes, marriage, yes, children, yes. Every single interaction needs effective communication.
It does. It does. And there's, I tell people all the time that there are 5 questions that you need to answer in preparation to communicate anything to anyone at any given time. 5 things. You need to think about, what do you want them to know, right? At the end of your communication, right, this person says, how are things going? At the end of it, what do you want them to know based on what your answer is? What do you want them to be able to do? Well, if they're walking into a promotion meeting that you don't even know is happening about an opportunity that somebody said you might be interested in, you probably want to validate that you might be interested in that, right? What do you want them to be thinking? How do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to have? Know, do, think, feel, and have. And what I want your audience to know is that if you didn't miss any of that, it's okay, because you're going to get it in the gift that you can download at the end of it. So I got you. But it is important. It's important that you think about the answer to those 5 questions, because oftentimes people are communicating in ways that leaves something out. And so if you can answer those 5 questions in preparation for the conversation, you walk into the conversation well prepared to communicate whatever it is you want to communicate to your spouse, to your children, to your team, to your housekeeper, to whatever.
And with practice, and for me, it's just because I'm linear. So I'm always thinking, once you get down the formula, whatever it is, the workflow, because I love workflows, then it's easy just to always know. It's always, okay, this is what I need to do. Did I answer that? Oh, wait, let me make sure that I close the loop so that there is oh, I didn't know that's what you meant. Oh, I didn't know that's what you wanted. Oh, no, let's fix that and close it up. A lot of times I think that, or I've been on the receiving end of people assuming. No, assuming doesn't work. I like to clearly tell you, this is what I want. If I don't understand, I'm going to ask the question. And there's nothing wrong with asking. It clears up, any gaps, and it lets people know you're paying attention. It lets them know that they're not being as effective as you need them to be. And you can just repeat back to them what they said, so that they can say, okay, I missed something, or I didn't communicate clearly. Let me fix that.
Right. I mean, I think about a conversation you and I had about the summit, right? I said to you, there was something that you needed from me that I didn't have. And so I just said to you, I said, hey, I'm really excited about participating, and I really want to support you in this venture, but I have a question. I'm reading this. I don't have this. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Right. And I was really not attached to the outcome. I was like, and I told you, I was like, I really am excited about supporting you and participating, but you need to tell me if that's okay or not. Right. There's nothing wrong. We live in a culture where we have come to believe that the truth is not safe, that telling the truth is not safe, and that somehow if you tell the truth, you're going to be punished for it. What I will tell you is, if you tell the truth like an idiot, you'll be punished for it. Absolutely. But if you have poor communication, it doesn't matter what you're communicating about. If you do it, in a poor way, you're going to be punished for your poor communication skills. If you can communicate clearly and be clean in your intent, right? My intent was very clean. I was like, look, I'm not trying to get over on you. I'm not trying to have you have an impression that's not true. Let me just tell you what the situation is, and then you can make an informed decision. And I think oftentimes people aren't ready, willing, able, or they don't know how, which is an ability thing I get, but there's this notion of knowing how and then a notion of knowing how, right? There's the head of it and then there's the heart of it. And oftentimes people, when the rubber meets the road, they don't know what to say. They're like, oh God, what do I do? And the truth really is safe. You can articulate your truth if you can do so clearly and be clear about your intent in articulating it, right? If you're using the truth for bad intention, you're going to get a bad result.
I think when a situation comes up and you're not sure about something and you're not sure how to clearly communicate it, if you say, well, this is what I understand, or I don't think that I'm able to do this, can you help me figure out, is that something that's workable, or what do I need to do? But it's just being clear on, I have a gap that I need filled so I can know what direction I need to go in next. What's my
Exactly. And to be really okay with this notion that whatever you decide about a thing will actually be what happens, right? So if you've decided that you really want to leave corporate America and go do something else, then you've got to start to act consistently with that and to be articulate about that in appropriate ways. If you've decided that you want to have a really big corporate career, then you've got to act in ways that are consistent with that. But it's a question of what you're deciding, right? There's things that I decided about 2018 that were consistent with you saying to me, hey, let's hang out some more. Let's have a conversation. Absolutely, I'm going to sit on Zoom for an hour with you and have a conversation. Why wouldn't I? Right? Because like we said, Black girls rock, right? So, Wakanda forever.
I started to do the haka, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that to them. So, yes. But I started to do the haka because that's where we met. No, I'm not going to do that to them.
Right. That's right. So, at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable and confident in knowing that your decision for your life is the right decision for you, and that you can walk that decision out every day, right? And part of the reason why I think people don't answer the question, how are things going, truthfully, is because they haven't really committed to their decision. They haven't really fully decided that this is what they want, and then they're not willing to think through how do they show up every day and articulate that in ways that set them up for the long-term success that they claim they want to experience.
I never thought about people don't answer that clearly because they haven't really made a decision that this is what they want. And I think for me, that's coming from a space of, I do my little research. I'm like, I narrow it down really quick. This is what I want. And then I'm done. That's what I do. But I do know people that waver and can't make a decision, which drives me crazy. So for me, as a person who is decisive, I was like, oh, people don't make a decision. I had to backtrack, and yes, not everybody just makes a decision. And that's why they're wavering in what's going on. How are you doing? How are things going? To me, that's a no-brainer. You just answer. And obviously now that we know how to correctly answer, but for the people that waver, they can't answer. And that's what I'm talking about.
Either that or they're worried about their answer. Right. So before I got on this call today, I was in a subcommittee meeting for a board that I sit on. And one of our board members, her company is going through, they're getting ready to move one of their offices. And, she's trying to decide if she's going to go with them. And when we got on the phone, it was just she and I said, how are you? And she said, I'm sad. Right. And most people don't think that that's a safe answer. Right? Like they're not going to say, I'm not, like we got sad news and I'm sad, right? And so it's important. You may not say I'm sad, but you need to be able to understand how you're feeling, especially about a thing like a layoff in your organization, right? And then decide what about that you want communicated so that you're on your own personal brand message. It was perfectly on brand message for her to say to me she was sad. It would have shocked me had she not said that. And had she not followed up with being concerned about her people and concerned about the impact this was going to have and all of the appropriate things that it made sense for her as a leader in her organization to say to me. You have a right to feel how you feel. And part of the reason people get the deer in headlights response when we say, how are things going, is because they're feeling an emotion they haven't thought through how they want to articulate. Right? Said another way, when the proverbial crap hits the fan, they haven't figured out how they're going to talk about that. In my life, the proverbial crap hit the fan, and you know this already, Kourtney. My mother died 5 days after my wedding. And when I came back from my honeymoon, I had to be prepared to talk to my clients and our colleagues about what happened. I made some decisions before I went back to work. I decided, one, if people didn't ask, I wasn't volunteering. It's really simple. If people did ask at the beginning of a coaching conversation, I told them we were going to talk about it at the end because I wasn't sure what the impact was going to be on the person.
Right.
The third thing was I was clear about what I was going to say, and then I was going to be quiet because I had learned, given what I had experienced of my mother's passing, that I wasn't sure how people were going to respond because everybody has a mother. And whatever your relationship is to her, me telling you mine died could be a triggering experience for you.
Right.
So literally, people would say, oh, how was the wedding? It was wonderful. Thank you for asking. And we can talk about it at the end of our session. So then at the end of the session, I promised you we would talk about it at the end. My wedding was wonderful. And unfortunately, 5 days after my wedding, my mother died unexpectedly. To a person, I had all kinds of reactions. I had, oh my God, I had tears. I had people scream. I had, you name the reaction, I had the reaction. But I had to think through in advance what I was going to say. And then I had to be okay with however people responded, because some people were like, oh, I'm really sorry. This was a really great day. I will talk to you later. Click. There were other people who wanted to take care of me. Oh my God, are you okay? There were other people who needed to be taken care of because they were having issues with their own parents, right? And so it's important that you decide what it is you want to say when your life is not going well. Because you can't hide it. If you're in the middle of a divorce, you're trying to get pregnant, you're having, you know, your sister got diagnosed with breast cancer, your mother just died, whatever it is, you need to think about when you're in a bad or sad space about that thing, what you're going to say when people say, how are things going? So you don't show up looking blind, crippled, and crazy at work because you're being distracted by whatever that thing is. So you have to get it handled. You have to get it handled.
Right. So before I let you go, if you can briefly tell me what gift, because we have like a minute or two, what gift do you have for these ladies?
Absolutely. So if you go to corneliashipley.com/IamHer, you are going to get all 5 of those questions and a little bit about them, how to use them to communicate anything to anyone at any time. And then for those of you that are leading organizations or teams, either in your daily work or in your volunteer work or with your kids or whatever, there's some questions that we're including in there around how to get feedback from your team and find the low-hanging fruit in your organization to move you forward quickly. So hopefully that'll be of service to the folks that are listening today.
I definitely think so. Thank you for your time. I know you are very busy. I greatly appreciate you, and I will be talking to you soon.
It was good to connect with you, Kourtney. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.